But what does this mean? This slide shows a potential Covanta facility of the near future. As I mentioned earlier, it would be a strategic facility handling both MSW and C&I waste. For a facility of about 600,000 tons a year, the annual carbon savings would be between 240,000 tons and 420,000 tons. The plant could produce enough low-carbon renewable energy to power about 70,000 homes, and it could deliver annual savings on waste management costs of around 20 million pounds per year. So what keeps us from realizing these objectives? Currently, just about the biggest barrier to EFW development lies in planning. And there is a pretty direct link between the scale of a project and the complexity and difficulty in securing planning. Government has done much in the past few years to address these issues. With the new Infrastructure Planning Commission, has the potential to reduce this risk substantially. We are convinced that the PPP model, with local authorities and companies working together to develop long-term solutions to the municipal residual waste requirements, will persist. Indeed, we believe that PPP can grow and embrace a wider pattern of partnership. Delivering value for money will become ever more important, as I've highlighted. And as I've also highlighted, scale economics can make a significant contribution to this. This means more local authorities working together to meet their mutual needs in transboundary PPPs. That said, we have grave doubts about PFI as we've known it as a viable financial model for many future procurements. I won't be telling you anything you don't already know when I say that the bank's appetite for risk has dwindled dramatically since the onset of the credit crunch. For EFW projects, our experience is the key areas of risk that concern the banks are technology risk, power risk, third-party income risk, and debt service coverage ratios. All of these criteria have become more stringent in recent years. And the overall effect of applying these significant shifts into more risk-averse positions for the banks is to increase gate fees to unprecedented levels. I would argue that the result are gate fees 40 to 60% above what the market really warrants. For projects to progress, therefore, someone has to step in and de-risk them for the banks. At the moment, the government and other public agencies have done this, for example, through the Treasury's Infrastructure Finance Unit. The Greater Manchester Waste PFI was the first contract to be, in effect, bailed out by the TIFU, assisted by the European Investment Bank and the Waste Authority itself. The result is that some £530 million was pumped in from public sectors. In contrast, £245 million came from the banks themselves. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this should not have been done. It's important that government and the EU have been able to step in with this kind of support to prevent important projects from failing. But this kind of intervention is not sustainable in the long term or across many projects. So how can value for money projects be delivered in this very challenging environment? At Covanta, we take the risk that the contractor can and should take the lead in de-risking projects. We would do this by injecting more and more of our own equity. In our view, contractors should be willing to put up as much as 50% of the project's finance in terms of equity, compared to 15 to 20% that was typical before the credit crunch. Clearly, such additional equity commitments cannot attract conventional equity returns. We have to rationalize this by taking a realistic view of how the markets will behave in the future. We would be looking to replace the additional equity element as soon as possible with additional senior debt when the banking markets return to something like normality, although this may be 5 or more years from now. But what this approach does over the medium term is create conditions in which the banks can achieve their objectives in terms of guarding against perceived risk, while at the same time assuring that gate fees are maintained at their proper level. To our way of thinking, this increased holding of risk by the contractor is the essence of the kind of risk transfer that PFI-PPP model is meant to deliver. It represents the best of the private sector working to deliver value for money to the public sector. As I've said at the outset, Covanta expects to invest around £2 billion in the UK market over the next few years. Although we are working through difficult times, we face them with a lot of confidence. and we are very keen to hear from anyone who likes the sound of the kind of partnership we are offering. Thank you.